For decades, the hunt for a safe, effective weight loss drug has been, well, a total roller coaster. It's been a story of massive hype, followed by some really dangerous and sometimes even deadly failures. But now, a brand new class of medications is pretty much changing everything we thought we knew. Okay, so let's dive into the wild history and the incredible science behind this revolution. So the big question we're going to tackle is this. After so many false starts and, frankly, scary stories, are the drugs we have today really different? Have we finally cracked the code on how to treat obesity safely and effectively with medicine? To get to that answer, we first have to understand the problem itself.
All right, let's start with the absolute fundamentals, because this is the key to understanding why these drugs are such a big deal. You know, what's so important to grasp here is that this totally reframes the entire conversation. For so long, obesity was just seen as a failure of willpower. But what the science actually shows us is that it's a chronic disease. Your body has these incredibly powerful, hardwired systems, these neurohormonal pathways, that fight like crazy to keep your weight at a certain set point. That's why Just Eat Less so often fails, and it's exactly why finding a medical intervention became the holy grail. But that search for a medical fix has let's just say, a very dark history. To really get where we are now, we have to go back and look at the ghosts of diet pills past. This timeline really shows you just how fast a miracle can turn into a complete nightmare. Back in the 90s, this combo of two older drugs, phentermine and fenfluramine, just exploded onto the scene. Everyone called it fen-phen, and it was hailed as this huge breakthrough. It worked on the brain's appetite controls from two different directions, and millions of people took it. But that miracle, it quickly turned into a disaster.
And this right here is the reason why. It turns out that fenfluramine, one half of that combo, was causing catastrophic damage to the heart valves and lungs of people who were otherwise healthy. It was yanked from the market in 1997, and it left this deep, deep scar of fear and skepticism toward any weight loss drug. The entire field was set back for years.
So the fen-phen disaster forced a complete and total rethink. Scientists knew they had to find a way to hit those appetite centers in the brain with way, way more precision.
The new mission was crystal clear. This wasn't just about making a drug that worked anymore. It was about making one that was safe. Could they design a kind of smart drug that would flip only the appetite switches in the brain and just leave the heart completely alone? And this is where the science got really brilliant. It turned out fen-phen was like a blunt instrument. It was hitting a receptor called 5-HT2B that, oops, is also found on your heart valves. So the next generation drug, lorcaserin, was engineered to be a scalpel. It was designed to selectively hit a different receptor, 5-HT2C, which is pretty much only found in the brain's hunger centers. It was just a masterpiece of targeted drug design.
And you know what? It worked. The FDA, after a ton of scrutiny, approved lorcaserin, which was sold as Belviq, back in 2012. It really seemed like, okay, we finally turned the corner. Here was a drug born from the ashes of past failures that looked like it was both effective and, most importantly, safe for the heart.
But then, 8 years later, this happened. The FDA did a complete 180 and asked the company to pull the drug from the market entirely. So what on earth went wrong this time? The reason was this tiny but statistically significant number. See, as part of the approval, the FDA made the company run a massive, long-term safety trial. And very deep in all that data, a really unexpected signal popped up. About 7.7% of patients taking the drug got a cancer diagnosis, compared to 7.1% on the placebo. That 0.6% difference, that was enough. The risk, no matter how small, was just deemed too high, and another promising drug bit the dust. So these repeated problems with drugs that act on the brain led to this radical shift in thinking. The new question was, instead of trying to trick the brain, what if you could work with the body's own natural metabolic system? And this thinking led to the rise of a whole new class of drugs, the GLP-1 receptor agonists. Now, these aren't stimulants. They're not trying to narrowly hit one little receptor in your brain. No, they're basically synthetic versions of a hormone that our own gut releases when we eat to tell our brain, hey, we're full, and to help manage our blood sugar. The power of this approach is that it's a multi-pronged attack. These drugs make you feel physically full by literally slowing down digestion. At the same time, they're sending signals straight to your brain's I'm full center.
And on top of all that, they actually improve how your body handles sugar. It's a whole metabolic intervention, not just a simple appetite suppressant. So, after this long, winding, and often rocky road, what does the modern toolkit actually look like? How do these new drugs really stack up against each other? Okay, this head-to-head comparison is just wow. The data is stunning. Semaglutide, one of the newer GLP-1 drugs, is delivering an average weight loss of almost 14%. That is a level of effectiveness that, before this, you really only saw with bariatric surgery. It completely blows older pills like phentermine diparamate and even the earlier generation GLP-1 liraglutide out of the water. So this is basically the toolkit we're working with today. Yeah, there are still oral pills like Qsymia and Contrave that work on the brain. But the real game changers, the ones setting a completely new standard for what's possible, are these injectable GLP-1s like Wegovy and Saxenda. The scientific journey has been absolutely remarkable, right? We've gone from dangerous stimulants to these highly effective hormonal therapies that actually treat obesity like the complex disease it is. So we're left with a really big question. Now that science has finally delivered these breakthroughs, is the biggest challenge no longer in the lab, but in making sure the people who need these transformative drugs can actually get them?